Hi, guys, and welcome. This is Jen Gaeta Siciliano, artist, memoir writer, bipolar psychiatric survivor, and your host of Not As Crazy As You Think podcast, the place that offers an alternative perspective on mental illness, highlighting creativity, non-conventional healing, and breaking on through to the other side. If you are ready for a new narrative on the mental realm that celebrates crazy and cool without penalty, then Not As Crazy As You Think is for you. Hello, this is Jen Gaeta Siciliano, your host of Not As Crazy As You Think podcast. Today, I have a very special guest. I'm so psyched he was able to come on board and talk about something that's very sensitive. And he's a fabulous find. He's involved with one of the projects I'm working on. So I'm thrilled to have met him and to have talked him into coming on the podcast. His name is Carlito Cabelin. He's an entrepreneur and a director and strategy executive for employee ownership. He's also found his way into the mental health crisis capacity as a disaster response crisis counselor for the state of New Jersey and a crisis counselor for Crisis Text Line. So, Carlito, I know how much you must have seen throughout this new journey of yours. However, I do want to get to the heart of what got you into this, which is your own personal crisis and your own mental health journey. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share a little bit and have us start there.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Jen. And first of all, it's just so great to be here. Just so glad to be able to speak to you and to open up. I'd love to share. And I can even tell you publicly that NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness, when they started their sort of their own blog of peers getting open about their struggles, they actually reached out to me. So It is on my journey is on you. If you were to go to like NAMI archives blog and put in my name, it actually would come up there. So just an FYI. So yeah, no, absolutely. The answer to the question is sure. I'd love to share with you about my mental health journey. Absolutely.
We had worked on some creative part of this project we're working on last week.
Yep.
And you opened up about the fact that you had suicide ideation.
Sure.
You went in as an outpatient, I believe.
Yeah, I went in first as a patient in the is it NYU or it was one of the psych wards in New York City. It was, I think, Cornell University on the east side. So with that, then the recommendation referral was the next day I actually was treated and released was to go into outpatient program. And so that's how, if you were thinking of the words outpatient, yeah, that's how I landed there. Was first by way of journey as a stop in New York City's, one of New York City's mental health hospitals. Yeah, on Cornell University. Yep.
So what were you dealing with exactly? I mean,
sure.
I'm a big believer that, mental illness or bouts with mental illness, triggers, anything like this, trauma, it comes from something. It's not in the biology. So what was it exactly?
Yeah, are you ready for this? All right, so buckle your seatbelts. So I sort of, my wife understood, like, yeah, do you need help? Do you need a hospital? Yes, I need help. So I ended up there by way of running from my church community. How about that? Okay. So how do I say this? A toxic culture, a place where I was sort of inwardly devouring myself. There was a lot of behaviors of just sort of, I don't know, gaslighting is a term that resonates right now because I had to learn about it through outpatient and therapy of the community I was in. There's a lot, especially from when I was hearing certain dynamics of ways I was being sort of manipulated, massaged in my head in certain interactions, not only to me, but it also, I had some journey and sort of chapters in my church community where I was imposing my will on people in gaslighting. Yeah. So instead of me talking about other people who are throwing their gas on me, I actually gassed on people, right? And it was just part of this systemic culture. And the wheels finally came off. It really came off. It came off when in certain dynamics with individuals, I flat out was like, the heck, I can't stand this. I can't stand people, can't stand anything about them. And it came out in a lot of fits of rage and anger. And it wasn't like, Jen, it wasn't like just one incident, one night, right? It was multiple sort of like stuffing emotions, sort of like that time bomb ready to go.
Yeah.
And all you need is one triggering interaction
Right.
to let it all out. So that's how I ended up in the hospital. But interesting enough, while I was in the hospital, this just weird sense of I felt so humiliated, embarrassed, wasn't sure how I got there. I knew it had to do with my fits of rage and finally just kind of letting it all out. I knew it wasn't normal, right? You don't just walk around and be like, all right, let's let this fit of rage out and just, okay, let me just go back to work tomorrow.
Right.
So when I was there, the first experience of just disrobing into a hospital gown was humbling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just being in a secure location and being watched and them asking me to kind of, get into patient gown was really strange and odd.
Yeah.
And then at that point, it wasn't like I can turn around and just leave the place, right? Wait, let me have a do-over there. I shouldn't have that fit of rage. Let me just go home.
Right. Right.
Right. It was like, okay, let's park this car in this garage and
Yeah.
start popping the hood. And one of the things that I think finally got me settled was I first of all, I couldn't look up to any of the hospital doctors that come in, like parading in and out of that sort of room of mine,
Mm.
and just whether it was like clicking of the pens, clipboards, talking over me. I didn't even want to listen to them. I was just like,
Yeah.
how the heck did I get here? I have no
Yeah.
idea how I'm here. But as they paraded in and out, I remember, and I'll never forget the person's voice, but this female patient nurse came in and she actually was asking me to take, some downers, like,
Mm.
some meds just to kind of sleep better. And I was just still kind of had that rumblings of fit of rage or just kind of picking up the pieces and just sort of, I guess devastated or whatever. And I'll never forget, it felt like an angel talking to me, but she was kind of firm. And when I was just like, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. I don't know what I want to do, just kind of crying or really bursting out and stuff. She actually settled me in and said, you know what? I think, Carlito, you know what you need to do. And I think you know you need help. And that's why you're here. So right now, what I think you need is just to take these pills so you can rest. Because if you rest and
Mm.
sleep, I think you'll be better in the morning.
Hmm.
And honestly, just hearing that voice was like, I can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because whether it was the suicidal thoughts of me getting there, suicidal thoughts are triggering and lingering on in my head while I was at the hospital, it was just this sort of opportunity and suggestion and offer. Do you want to sleep? You need to just kind of rest. And I was
Yeah.
like, that sounds great right now. Give me
Yeah.
those pills. And
Right.
so I took them and it felt like, wow, she's right. That's what I need. And I'll never, like, ever to this day know what she looked like, but I do know she kind of spoke the right words at the right time. And that's what I needed.
Right.
So that was me landing in the hospital, if you will, and sort of just surveying what the heck is going on. So
Well,
yeah.
that's interesting because, you are now the voice on the other side for people, like
Yeah.
giving them the right suggestions, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But it's really, I know exactly just the scene, any
Mm.
emergency
Yeah.
room scene in
Yeah.
in psychiatric thing. I
Right.
totally get that. And
Yeah.
there is a sense that I mean, I've done it. I've been on the inside several times.
Yeah.
Most of the times I didn't want to be there. I felt it was, there were misunderstandings, a variety
Right.
of things.
Right.
However, hearing your story brings me back to the few times
Mm.
when I felt that it wasn't going to be negative and that I
Mm.
could use the rest and I could
Mm.
use the taking myself out of my environment.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's a
Yep.
big thing. So tell me a little bit about what you found inside. Like, what was
Yeah.
this, outpatient like? What did it offer? What were the therapies that worked? What did you
Yep.
resonate with?
Yeah. So, in the hospital itself, it was sort of, it was rest, wake up the next day. And honestly, because it was New York City and maybe because I was in New Jersey, they only kept me there one day.
Yeah.
They really did. And all I again remember is just doctors in and out parading in and out. Maybe it was a teaching university hospital and they were just coming in and out. But for some reason, when I left and I got back in the car with my wife, it was that sort of moment of like, they did recommend outpatient treatment. I don't know what that is. We got to figure that out and just kind of research it. And we did. And so these are treatment centers, right? Recovery centers.
Mm-hmm.
And so going to recovery centers itself was just, it just started, it became sort of this deer caught in the headlights. And what I know is I don't want to go back to fit of rage, anger, and because I hate people in the world and now I hate myself, I want to kill myself. I knew I don't want that anymore. So whatever is so I know I need to go somewhere and figure this out, really pop the hood literally and get into my wiring. And I didn't even know that type of language, but I just knew that I just need to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So going to Gen Psych in New Jersey was huge for me of just, it just became sort of like this new chapter of like, look, we're here to help you. Let's do an intake. And then I was kind of just, all right, let's just do this. Let's walk through this. Let's get through this. No idea where it's going to go. So it became for me another community, to be honest with you. And a community. Now imagine if you, I kind of told you at the outset, I ran from a church community. Isn't that crazy, right? You would think church community is safe and all that. No, I ran from it, left skid marks kind of thing, right? I arrived in a recovery center and it felt like a place of just, what it had to do with the people I met initially welcoming and maybe the intake person was great. I don't know, but it started to become a place like I'm away from the toxic environment. I'm away from the fire. Now let me just go somewhere stable and just sit in these rooms and just sit and just, and they started kind of like getting me into, so it became program meaning one of the first programs I went to, our first sessions it was just about meditation. That's it. Right. Meditation. But that was new to me. Yeah. So to me, word meditation, whatever, I'm open to what it is. All we did was just like we counted in, breathed out, just hearing our breath, praying, whatever, not even the word prayer wasn't either, just meditating. And I was in the room with the facilitator, it was just me. And I was the only one that showed up at group that night. So that first session was, okay, I kind of like this. Wherever I was before in a community that had all this fire and toxic stuff, I kind of like being here. This is safe. Let me just listen to my breathing. Give me more. I want, so like, this is a new chapter. Give me more. I want to know more. I'll come tomorrow, that kind of thing. So it became very much that from, and by the way, this is a PM group. They call it PM group. So for folks like myself, which I guess the diagnosis was he could still perform at work, right? He's not SMI, serious mental illness, but he could go and perform at work. The evening program, the PM program was for those folks like myself who could work a full day, go at night, evening. We're there for 3 hours. The first 90 minutes is process. You're in this room with your peers. You're processing whatever your day was. Took a break. And the last hour was skills. And then they start teaching you concepts like boundaries, DBT skills, I am statements, whatever, all positivity stuff. So that's what the program looked like. It just became another community and I was eating it up. Honestly.
That's great. That's great. Yep. I know that you also told me that you really liked their music program. What was that like?
Oh yeah, so music therapy, right? Yeah. So okay, so you ready for this? When it's not like it was an elective, right? It was just sort of like go music therapy, and I was like, oh, well, that sounds cool, right? So the musical therapist would come in with a guitar, and he'd have his smartphone and a Bluetooth speaker audio. It was like 4 of us, whatever. And so he would also invite everyone like, hey, you grab an instrument if you want, the drums or whatever, or the maracas, and then let's go with some songs. So he'd make a suggestion, start, playing on the guitar air, and then ask us for recommendations or suggestions. So this became an opportunity to be like, great, now I could sit here and give you recommendations of my favorite Grateful Dead song, Bob Dylan or Eric Clapton or whatever, and then whoever else is in the room they gave up. They're like Taylor Swift or whatever. So we all got the culture in, and we were vibing with music. And I thought to myself during that session, Jen, it was like, wow, just think my peers are working hard right now at banking, right? They're just slaving away for the big man upstairs. I'm here listening to my favorite music, and this really cool musical therapist is hitting the guitars and all the notes, and we're jamming. And we're just jamming, right? Yeah. So, of course, I was just gobbling that up. I'm like, give me more. I'm coming tomorrow. Give me more. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like they had some good programs involved. And
Yeah.
I've been in, like I said, several times, and I've
Mm.
been in outpatient programs as well, like after the inpatient program. So, like, there are certain ones that really run well, and they're tapping into what's important right now in
Yeah.
wellness. In,
Yeah.
how to kind of stabilize irregular emotions.
Yep.
They're starting to like incorporate it. So the one of the last ones I was in 2016, very
Yeah.
good hospital. We had horticulture, we did have
Nice.
music,
Yeah.
it was great. It was like, and of course art, and that's always something that I
Of
love.
course.
But if you do like approach program with this like kind of like, oh cool, I'm open, I'm willing,
Right.
kind of like you're able to pick up those skills to go home with. It is, it can be a positive thing. So I know that you personally do not come at the system in the same way maybe I do,
Right.
because you're not here to prosecute the system.
Hmm.
You are a person who has come out on the other side after the program and felt inspired, empowered, and kind of like it sounds like kind of put together again in some way.
Yeah.
And I will say you referred to, and I want to make a mention
Yeah.
to anyone out there who's listening. Many people feel the way that you felt in certain kind of religious settings. And that's one of the issues that I think religiosity and
Right.
spirituality has been taken out of the languaging,
Yeah.
because I guess medicine is trying to be thoughtful to those people,
Yeah.
like if anyone should have like some kind of discomfort about it,
Yeah.
but we're coming back like around now.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that in a little while, but I do definitely want to hit on all of these wonderful points that A.W.A.R.E, which is your
Well, where aware is how do I say this? It's a movement. It's more than a movie that's coming up, more than a docu-series that's coming up. It's a movement that I've been a part of since June 1st. And A.W.A.R.E really stands for this, Jen. It's, are we aware of religious experiences in mental health crisis?
okay. I absolutely love this.
Yes. Hmm.
Okay, so before we get to all this,
Yeah.
okay,
Mm.
I want to know, and I want everyone to kind of get the opportunity to peek in
Mm.
to what someone like you must deal with and how
Mm.
you can, come to the side of someone and rescue in a way, because I know that there are so many people dealing with needing help,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we want those people to get help. So
Right.
tell me a
Right.
little bit about, first of all, we know everybody's in crisis.
Sure.
What does crisis really mean, and how do you come across it on your crisis counseling experience?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I like to invite people to hear this word crisis over and over because it's real. It's, as we just were talking about, I had a moment where I had to go someplace to feel safe, right? But crisis is, to me, defined as that person, it's valid whatever they go through. You could drop your phone, crack the screen, you're in crisis, literally, and people will be like, that's real, right? Lose the phone, you're in crisis. I mean, you watch, I've been through it, like what we go through
Yeah.
when we misplace our smartphone or crack it. It's like the world ends for people, right?
Yeah.
Now that's valid and that's real because I've been there. But now imagine this. So I'll give you a day in the life of Carlito in this shift, right? So the hotlines that are out there, there are very plenty of them. 988 is the most, it's actually the rebrand of National Suicide Hotline, right? So it's 988. So Crisis Text Line, brilliant organization where they started in 2013. It really is a hotline you text in on.
Right.
So I'm on a laptop as a counselor, very remote work. And on my platform, on my laptop, my dashboard, have everything there. I have the window chats that I'm typing out, chatting to them and texting while they're texting in on their phone. And I got my supervisor there, resources, any other additional information I need to kind of cover my shift, right? So this past Sunday, believe it or not, I actually choose the shifts on Sunday only because there's less counselors on shift.
Mm-hmm.
The owl shifts, believe it or not, owl shifts like midnight to like 4 or 5 a.m. Those are like the shifts of that's like hot line.
Yeah.
You're not even in a foxhole with the bullets flying over. Like these
Right.
are people in their darkest moments. They need to
Yeah.
go somewhere. It's coming. There's in queue 100 people probably waiting, right? So that's like the darkest moments are. It coincides with even like the middle of the night. They never sleep, whatever. They need to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
So I do choose a Sunday mornings, and the reason why is because there's not enough, crisis text line volunteers on shift. So I feel like I'm covering, right?
Yeah.
And I do it because I want to keep some of my skills fresh, right? I used to do 4 hours a week. I can only do 1 or 2 now. I'll do sometimes in the middle of the week, 1 hour early in the morning or on Sunday. Sunday is usually a time for me just to kind of like make sure my skills are honed and sharp because I'll rarely ever get an active rescue. An active rescue is exactly what it sounds. The person needs EMT called in, someone to show up on scene and check in on them, right?
Mm.
So get this past Sunday, prior to this, recording of us right now,
Yeah.
was my first ever active rescue on a
Oh,
Sunday morning. Crazy.
really?
Crazy. It's crazy with the alignment of like how I'm
Yeah.
very involved with
Timing.
A.W.A.R.E. Yeah, timing and all that. So it starts like, and I've had about half a dozen active rescues, right? So you have supervisors that help you through it. But what happens is, and I remember very much the person coming in, it's within maybe the first text they say, this is it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to kill myself, basically.
Ooh.
Right. Now, those we know are coming in not only hot, but sort of like their fingers on the trigger of something, right?
Yes.
So goals of crisis hotline volunteers, counselors, what we want to do is we ultimately want to get them to a calm and get to that point and then empower them with some resources. But first, that opening sort of dialogue is all about validation, validation, validation. So they came in. A lot of times it's, hey, she'll share with me a little bit about what's going on. I'm here to listen and here to support you through your crisis, right? Outward looking in, a lot of people think, well, hotlines, if you're on a hotline, you don't talk about suicide, right? You'd be afraid to kind of give them the thought of it. No, it's the opposite. Our training is, no, we go after it because they're thinking about it right away.
Yes,
It's in there. You're not adding anything new to them. So when they come in, it's a lot of you did the right thing by raising your hand and asking for help today.
Yeah.
Now, that phrase itself, Jen, on a text means enormous to a person on the receiving line.
Of course.
Yep. And you and I can verbalize it back and forth, but when you see those words on a text and the person's hot and they're triggered, ready, it's like, I did something right.
Yeah.
Really? I did something right. And it really is that. I mean, this is nothing we're just kind of trying to say and act out so we could just get them to calm. It generally, for me, my stats, if I looked at it recently, I think it was like 800 hours in the field and like 600 texters, right? Ever since 2019.
Wow.
Obviously I've been through for, a number of years and many counseling, but really you generally feel it. Like, first of all, I've come to realization the people who are on the hotlines asking for help, they're not asking for it. But what they are doing is they're the most self-aware people. They're like, I got to get open about this. I got to figure out how to talk about this. Kind of like how I told you in the beginning, there's something brewing in me, like a time bomb ready to tick. And I just kind of let it off, right?
Yeah.
These people are actually doing the right thing by saying, I'm ready to kill myself. I got to call these people. I don't know why, but I'm going to do it, right?
Yeah.
So that for me is actually a comforting thing to know that there are hotlines out there where people can go because at least they know they want to open up about pain. And people, we all have pain. I dropped my phone. The cell phone, the screen is cracked. I'm in pain right now. I lost my phone. We know how awful it feels. Now, these people who have either had some trauma from past life of abuse, sexual abuse, whatever, emotional abuse. They've been in some sort of dynamic where they're addicted to something, right? I mean, I've heard everyone's darkest secret, so to speak, whatever. If there is a holiday coming up, they come in on the lines, they're reminded, like, I can't go to this Thanksgiving dinner because I know sitting across the table from me at the dinner is my abuser when I was a kid. And I never got open about it, whatever, that kind of thing. They're aware. They're self-aware. Yeah. So them coming in on the hotline, first of all, to me is like, wow, they came. That's huge. That really is huge. So we acknowledge and we sit and help validate for them And then we get to a rapport building. And rapport building can be a little bit tough. It can be challenging because sometimes you get people who are right away like ready to click with you. And then you get other people who like say one word sentences like, hi, or like, I don't know what to do. They just don't know how to kind of speak or have any conversation. And then also get some of those who are just ready to vomit and have like 8 lines worth of emotions that they're just kind of typing away at their screen. And I could tell, right? If they're vomiting all their emotions, I don't even look to interject. I'll just kind of let it out of their system. And actually, those are the quickest sort of counseling or shortest spans where they kind of air things out.
Yeah.
And then you're acknowledging, you're listening in, and these folks are like, I feel better now. Thanks. I'm going to go.
Wow.
Yeah. So you really get the dynamic of people and behaviors of people just by what the pace of the texting, the words they're using, the amount of words they use, or even if it's just like acronyms or whatever, and the length of stay they're on the chat.
Okay.
Quite fascinating to me.
And I'm getting from this that a lot of this is your training, but now this is also your experience that you've come across, and you could see all the different types of states that people are in.
Yep.
And it's amazing because it seems as though the one common denominator that I keep hearing is that talking about it is safe. That's a good thing. That gets you out of the state by being able to talk about it.
Huge.
That's amazing.
And isn't that so reflective of dynamics, relationship dynamics, right? Mm-hmm. Whether we're talking parent-child, spouse, dynamics with, say, authority at work or in a social setting, whether it's a congregation, church setting, or just a friend setting, right? Mm-hmm. It's just this whole dynamic of you stuff, you hide, you shy away, you let it fester.
Yeah.
It's destroying you inside.
Right.
But those folks who come and there's, sometimes we actually have some texters who have a profile with us. They come back, right? Mm. And what's interesting about that is those are the ones we really want to work on to help empower them that they can go and work things out on their own. Right. But if they come back, at least we have a history, we know, and we try something different with them. Because they could be circlers, right? They could be circlers. Yeah. Or they could be like, hey, I like this network. I like this. It's kind of social for me. Let me come here and just kind of get my sort of, lay out my guts and get angry, get all that kind of stuff out.
It's cheaper than therapy.
It's cheaper than therapy.
Yeah. I feel for people who don't have somebody. And listen, I've been in those years, sprinkling throughout. Like I knew I couldn't really communicate with someone who would hold space for me. But that's why I always find the people who have been in crisis before end up being the best crisis counselors or, addiction specialists who've been in, addiction. Yep. It's always the type of thing that, people they feel right away, probably your empathy. And your ability to relate and to guide them onto the path that's needed. So I personally want to thank you because I think it's very important. And in so many ways, I mean, bottom line is we want to help people, right?
Yeah,
we want we want people to get out of crisis and into the hands of safety. Tell me a little bit about your ideas of trauma and then getting onto the other side of getting past the trauma and dealing with learning how to be resilient.
Yeah. So the way trauma was posed, that question was posed to me, and it was for a course curriculum called Fostering Resilience, right? And I came up with my own sort of car accident that I had, which wasn't much. It was just sort of like it's a little more than a fender bender, but I related the emotion of how I felt after the accident with what I opened up with you about the trauma I had at church. Okay. The emotion is the same. The pain's the same. We have so many different degrees of levels of pain, right? So the metaphor really is, in definition of trauma, is, well, I liken it to an accident. And say you're coming to an intersection and you had that accident in the past. And, over time, you can certainly avoid that intersection where you had that car accident. You can go around the left, you can go around to the right. You can completely go avoid it by, skipping out of town and just not going anywhere near that intersection. But because it's so hard to forget trauma and it's so challenging to forgive the
Yeah.
person who inflicted trauma, right? It's just, we're human, we're real, right?
Yeah.
So, but after you work through the trauma and however long it takes, you can, there are moments though you're actually forced to go back to that intersection. You really are.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
just, for whatever the flooding on, the exits to that side of the north side of the street, the south side is blocked off for a parade or whatever, you're forced to go down that block. So what I learned with skills and recovery and outpatient, my therapist, you name it, just I learned that when you approach the intersection, you got to cope ahead. And once you get there, as long as you can hold the steering wheel firmly, not too hard, I actually learned some skills that, honestly, while you're driving, there's some coping skills that if you're trying to relieve yourself of stress, anxiety, like grab the steering wheel, like tighten it up, right? Give yourself some pain, let go. Do it
Yeah.
every 5 seconds. Like, cause now you're just thinking of just the steering wheel, right? You're trying to dislocate that racing mind of like that, whatever
Yeah.
that image is that's hurting you. And you're just having anxiety and stress. So that's kind of a coping skill out there for anyone who's listening, just when you're
Hmm.
driving. And in New Jersey, right, Jen? There are a
Yeah.
lot of road ragers out
Oh,
there,
yes.
right? You road rage.
Very true.
15 minutes, just try 15 minutes on the Garden State Parkway. Cut off. People just own the road. Go
Yeah.
ahead, own the road. I usually like, so let it. You got it. Knock yourself out. Go 80
Right.
down the left side. I'll stay in this lane going 65. Right. But you get stressed out driving somewhere, just grab the steering wheel, tighten it up. Right. They call that tip in DBT.
I
You
like
change up
that.
you sort of apply some pressure somewhere.
Yeah.
So when you come to the intersection of trauma, though, you can hold on to that steering wheel firmly and just calmly drive. Look both ways, maybe 2, 3 times this time around. Accelerate through, right? Don't keep braking through the intersection. Accelerate calmly through the intersection and move on. You can move through
Yeah.
this. And of
Yes.
course, I learned that term of moving through and not just getting past things. You got to
Yeah.
move through it. So
Yeah.
that's my definition of trauma.
I love it because, it really, metaphors are so wonderful,
Huge.
when you can use them to, land on big ideas.
Yep.
And this is a big idea. And yeah, there's all different kinds of traumas. There's small T trauma, there's
Yep.
big T trauma, right?
Right.
But I love this idea because it's almost like with a vehicle, if you're in the driver's seat,
No.
you have to do certain things in order to get from point A to point B.
Yep.
And I love this idea of like going around because we've all, if you've suffered trauma, and many of us have,
Sure.
and we haven't yet, if someone hasn't yet, you probably will in this lifetime suffer
Yep.
some sort of trauma if someone passes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Where, you want to avoid. That is a very natural thing. But the other thing that's so important, I love this idea of moving through it,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
like you don't have to get all wrapped up in it. You don't
Right.
have to, and it's always that intersection's not going anywhere. It's going to be there. You have
Correct.
to return to it.
You do. Yep.
But it
Yep.
might be easier and easier once you find the wheels to take you through,
Yep.
And
Yep.
I think it's really important for people to understand that trauma, even though it's in your body and it
Yep.
seems like it may always be with you, the story will be with you always.
Yeah.
But in time, the trauma changes.
Yeah.
The trauma that I experienced in India when I was 22 years old is nothing like it was for many, many years. It's been worked through. But what I did notice personally is that I
Uh-huh.
did not work through that trauma up until pretty
Ah,
recently. And that's
interesting. Yeah.
why I kept getting revisited by my own, board of directors voices. I like to call
Right.
them the board of directors sometimes.
I like that. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
The one thing that helped me as you were talking, I also thought that the final piece that helped me was hearing these words over and over is it's not your fault. Carlito, it's not your fault. Right.
That's a
And
big one.
finally, I understood that scene from Good Will Hunting. Do you remember that movie with
Oh,
Robin
Yes.
Williams and Matt Damon.
When he
And
says that over and over to
it's
him,
not
and
your fault. And then Matt Damon was trying to fight him off, and he's like, "Stop it! I don't want you know." And then finally he broke down, and they embraced. But it was just the
yeah,
right moment of just, it's not your fault. And it's so huge in trauma how we sit with a stronghold. And I a really close friend of mine, elder in the church, he always talks about identifying the strongholds. And as a crisis counselor, he talks about trauma. Crisis counselor, I look at above the waterline, sort of the tip of the iceberg. He looks at below those strongholds. And, because we do these workshops called Crisis and Trauma. And it very much is like on hotlines, I can see with the naked eye what's going on, right? What's unraveling. And for sure, as I get people through hot to calm and empower, and they hope, they leave and learn something or acquire something, then it's like we kind of hope and pray they'll go and get treated in triage and later on and figure out in therapy, like there's some deep strongholds there.
yeah,
And one of the things to realize is, it's not your fault. It really isn't. And we have such a hard time processing and letting go.
yes.
And it's huge though when people can tell you and remind you that it's not your fault. Yeah.
And that's brilliant, by the way. And that's so important on so many levels. If you take on the guilt and the
Yeah.
ownership of things
Right.
that are out of our control, it just exacerbates the problem. So that's
Exactly.
a great thing to really put out there. Another important question that I know that you
Yep.
presented in Crisis is this. What does help look like to you today?
Yeah.
Now, that to me
Yeah.
is so brilliant because
Mm.
it's putting first of all,
Yeah.
respect in the hands of, oh, you know what you need to get, to
Kind of like
get
that
help.
nurse in the psych ward with me. Yeah. The nurse who said, yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
It's kind of like the
So
voice.
when you do that, I mean, it really changes the whole trust
Yes.
situation.
Yep.
So tell me, like, where, you have found that to be helpful.
I'd love to. Yeah. Because first of all, one, a supervisor trained me on that while it was active rescue
Oh, wow.
case. Yeah. On crisis text line. And I'm so glad to get this on the broadcast and the airways because it is really a case that revealed a lot to me.
Mm.
And it was just one of those epiphanies like, holy moly, so I got to kind of talk to people about this. Right. And I've used this as case scenario and I explain to people, whether it's in community church congregation or first responder community, hey, peers. So there was an individual, I come on the line and the person, first of all, was telling me, don't call the cops. I'm jumping on the train tracks.
Oh my
If you
God.
do that, I am jumping on committing suicide, right?
Yeah.
And it was very, of course, yeah, very challenging to sort of work the person to, hey, let's just first talk things through,
Yeah.
and I'm here to help you. And so it got a long-winded way, just to kind of help that person stabilize, right? Naturally, they were in crisis. A few things for me, though, that was telltale signs is the person kept telling me where they were in Baltimore, like which train stop. So for me, it was like they actually want help. They want to actually kind of say, I'm here, right? So looking back 2020, there's so many things I was piecing together like, wow, this person really was actually asking for help in the beginning because they knew they're saying, oh, if you call the police, I'm here at Columbus and station, blah, 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 I'm going to jump, right? So they're telling me, come help me, save me, kind of thing, right? Anyways, it got to a point where they were circling. They were sort of at a point where just, this is it. I'm going to do it. And I was challenged with that. So the supervisor, they come in right away once we flag it. And I tried several different questions or sort of like validations and empathy and, tentifiers, we call it, right? The supervisor said, try this sentence. This is the last one, right? What does help look like to you today? It was brilliant. Yeah. So fantastic supervisors. Love. So I put that in the chat and what came back on the other end just blew me away.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It blew me away. So the person responded and said, and there's a pause, right? It's sort of like, this is my last sort of effort. I don't know what's going to happen. Right. So it was sort of like, I was on the, edge of my seat too. The person responded after a brief pause, like, I just want to know that somebody cares about me, period.
Mm,
For me, I was like, whoa, Jen,
mm,
isn't that what we all want? Deep
exactly.
inside,
Right.
right? Deep inside, we just like, I want to know, do you want to listen to me, care about me? Whoever it is, they're, in family dynamic, whatever, right? Relationship, we kind of talk about one-on-one, whether it's with parent, child, spouse. We're all looking for validation, care,
Yes.
love. Well, I just want to know, does somebody care about me? Is
Oh
what
my
that person said.
gosh.
And, it ended up very positive. There was an active rescue. We had the cross triangulation of the cell phone tower, so they know where the person was.
Oh
So,
wow.
and I can actually follow along if they keep the phone line open.
Oh
I can actually follow.
really?
Yeah, so they made it there. It was
Ah.
great,
Oh
but it
wow.
was really kind of cool because it came to a point where the person's like, when the person finally said, just want to know if somebody cares about me," it was sort of like, yeah, no, that's why I'm here, right? We're very much trained like, I'll always be here. Not only me, but an army of, volunteers. We're here for you. We'll always be
Mm,
here. They need to hear things like that. Like, I
right.
can go somewhere, right? And then it became more conversational, and the person's like, okay, I'll wait. Right. I'll wait for you. It was so awesome. And then they showed up. But then after that, I closed up the conversation, made my notes. I was like, that was almost the answer to life right there.
Yeah.
The biggest epiphany. I was like, walked away. I was like, well, I feel better. I was like, I just
Yeah.
feel like now I know what I need help in.
Right.
Yeah, blew me away. Blew me away.
It's amazing
Yeah,
because you know what? It really comes down to that, doesn't it? It's just we're all trying to do our best and be
yeah.
human. And sometimes we need to know that people care about us.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us have families that aren't the perfect
Right.
environment.
Yep.
Okay.
Wasn't stable.
We try, yeah,
Yeah.
we try to find community elsewhere. Some
Yeah.
people have wonderful families, but the truth of it is, wherever you find yourself in this life, there's going to be a time when it's not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And you might, struggle. And I don't know, you're softening my heart here because um I have gone through so much with the mental health system. And
Yeah.
I know that sometimes people do get forcibly hospitalized and
Yeah.
medicated, even
Right.
along the lines.
Yeah.
But what we were discussing this week was it's almost like at what cost?
Yeah.
What we're hoping is that the mental health industry is learning what needs to change and how to, in case there's error, in case they move too aggressively,
Mm-hmm.
there's a way to prevent some of this from happening as well. So I do want to go and land into that AWARE project
Yep.
because we are pushing it forward.
Right.
Okay.
It's a movement.
Yeah, it's moving. I want you to talk about a little bit about who's in the scene, who's behind the scenes,
Absolutely.
and what we are trying to get out there.
Yeah. So aware is a movement. It is. It's, are we aware of religious experiences? So before I came on, and I looked in on this group from the outside, and I was like, wow, there's just something going on here. There's a movement, right? So me with my staying in crisis lane and knowing I do need to help and give back. I want to, right? Based on my pain, and I don't want anyone else to go through the pain that I went through. Then it started intersecting for me. There's that word, intersecting. So I started looking at, wow, this movement coalition group, global too, they're about, hey, we've got some of the professionals and leaders in psychology, mental health, and religion. We're all networked together. Let's talk.
Yeah.
And what I started to sort of pull on the thread and realize, it almost became a quick back history in my orientation that the reason we need to talk is because right away, these three silos are not talking to each other.
Right.
They're on their own. They're trying to fix things, and they need each other.
Yeah.
We need to talk to each other because right now, one doesn't trust the other and another one doesn't trust that. So it's all about relationships. That's what I believe in the world today. It's all about relationships. So I realized, wow, I mean, this is a great intersection for me where I come from crisis. I look at, and you kind of had that question, how do you apply it today? Well, in any sort of dynamic, even myself, if I'm, again, borderline personality disorders, I kind of was being diagnosed with not only bipolar, but maybe borderline. If I spike, whatever that on the spectrum I'm going to, it's like, here's an emotion here. All right. It's going intense. All right. So what is it that I need to figure out and sort of wise mind, DBT wise mind, kind of apply more sort of skills to ground myself, right? I
Mm.
kind of see that in the movement itself. I
Mm.
see that there's a lot of emotion out there. There's a lot of folks that went through a religious and spiritual experience that was painful, right?
Hmm.
So therefore, let's not get into the weeds of how they got there, right? Let's not, I think you love this word, right? Pathologize, right? And just
Hmm.
analyze and try and sort of one size fits all. And then pharmacy and, the magic pill will kind of solve, or just kind of calm it for the moment. And then if
Yeah.
it for the moment, maybe longer, and just like make it sort of like a routine pill a day, that kind of thing. But then it just became like, all right, as a crisis person, I'm not too concerned how they got there, how they were abused, and what they were sort of disjointed in their family and that dynamic. I care about the pain. Let's get into
Right.
the calm, right? Now, because we all have emotion of pain, let's not judge one another, right? So
Mhm.
spiritual religious experience is the same as someone having any kind of trauma in their life. I want to see, like, can we figure, like, I came out of I ran from a spiritual community
Yeah. Yeah.
to a not only psych ward slash outpatient group, and found the system, like, yeah, safety net, right? I
Yes.
needed somewhere to go that was non-clergy and
Yeah.
kind of feel like, wow, I'm safe. So I do feel like that, there are solutions, and we need to kind of divorce how they got there, why they got there. Let's deal with the emotion first. And I do see that in the movement. Like, a lot of the lived experience, everyone peer supports each other, but all of our peers who've been through some experience, we go through brokenness, recovery, coming out. Now we want to help others, right?
Yes. Yes.
So let's kind of make sure everything's talking the same language, not Greek to Latin to Italian or whatever, and
Right.
get sort of on a unified page. So that's what I see in the movement at a macro sense.
That's great. I mean, that's so exciting. And it's so interesting too because okay, so you mentioned the psychologists, mental health experts,
Yep.
wherever they land,
Yep.
and then also the spiritual, the
Yep.
the religious groups.
Hmm.
So this is really interesting because I'm sure you encounter
Yep.
many clergy who have also come, into realization that this is a thing, that
Yeah.
people call out for voices or whatever it is. Like
Yeah.
it looks differently in many different experiences.
Yeah.
But I think the common thing that's happening is that they're calling for the masters, right? They often
Hmm.
might say Jesus or Buddha or
Right.
Muhammad.
Right.
And like up until this point, everyone was just like, that's just a mental illness. Now, I
Hmm.
know Janet Werner is very involved,
Huge. Yeah. She's a force to reckon with too.
and I know you guys work as partners. And what's
We do.
wonderful is that you guys have such a strong first responder acceptance of this, the momentum that's building right now. It was
Yeah.
really cool to see some of the people who were talking with you guys on that last round.
Yeah. Chief of police, doctor,
Yes.
psychologist now, ex Air Force, ex police. Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about what is going on because as much as we know what's going on,
Yeah.
this is something that's just in the seed stage because we want to go USA and
Yeah.
global, right? So this
Yeah.
this awareness. So talk a little bit to that.
I really feel like there's like cutting edge mental health psychological first aid. It really is. And
Mhm.
there's nothing in new technology about it.
Yeah,
It's about empathy and listening.
right.
And maybe it's new on how we approach it, but there's not this new technology of a drug, or some sort of 12 step, 14 whatever, right? Any kind of like special recovery center, so to speak. So where my lane is where, not even in the foxhole, sometimes the fire, the bullets are all flying around. You got to figure out, like, let's get them into the foxhole first and get them to triage,
Mm,
right? Well, right there and then is where the work starts.
right.
So I was fascinated by just seeing what Janet said to me of some pieces that, for example, HBO's Crisis Cops is a movie, right? And with Ernie Stevens, and hearing the sound bites from that, and that simply put, police academies on average train police officers 60 hours or more on training on how to learn how to shoot a gun, but only 8 hours on mental health and communication, right?
It's so crazy.
And Ernie Stevens said that. He said, we got to change that, right?
Yeah.
And from that other First Responder Friday soundbite you heard from Dr. Jory about, and this blew me away, right? He remembers when he was in the police force early on in his career, showing up on scene in Florida at someone's house, and wives were considered shadow property. They were considered part of the property. So it was a domestic abuse call, and they could be beating up on the wife. Once the husband says, "You're on my property, get out of here," they had to leave.
Wow.
Okay, that's verbatim what Dr. Jory said on that first responder call. I'm like blown away, right? But things have changed through awareness, right?
Yes.
So now with what I feel like, and hearing also sound bites from police officers of saying, it's not so much a manic episode that's going on. 40% of our first calls are something of the spiritual religious emergency, not an awakening. Okay. There are folks who have gone through, say, an awakening, a spiritual sort of epiphany, sort of a revelation, the lightning hits them, that kind of thing. Now, again, as a crisis counselor with my hat on, I'm not judging the black and white of it. I know there's emotion there. I know it's intense. It's real. It's valid. Okay. Let's not analyze this. Let's help the person first.
Right.
So that's a deliverable I can bring to A.W.A.R.E right away.
Yeah.
Where I can go and I've got to carve out all this time, but I'm ready to do it. It's just I got to get out of my software business full time to kind of do this. And we'll get there. We'll figure that out. I'll make a pitch on what we're doing in the employee ownership industry where I can sell my software. Right. But anyway, so there's easily training that's not that hard to do with crisis responders about identifying if this is a spiritual emergency. Okay. So they had an awakening moment, but based on some of my own education on this topic, it's the ego that their ego that can't sort of process the moment of the spiritual awakening. It's too overwhelming for them.
Yes.
That now it goes into disjointed, disorganized, and now it's an emergency. Well, instead of just an immediate, knee-jerk reaction of like, well, maybe we should just send him to the hospital. Maybe I should just put the cuffs on. Well, maybe there's got to be a conversation of, hey, are you going through some sort of spiritual emergency? We have an interfaith spiritual network, or whatever we want to tag or code it, language app. Would you want to call from one of them, right? So interfaith doesn't have to be a Christian, doesn't have to be Western or Eastern or Hindu. It could just be an interfaith network where there's a spiritual counselor ready to kind of talk you through your moment. It's got to be that. Yeah. Because the numbers to me, Jen, are striking of just how many people have gone through this type of an emergency, which a lot of us today in my sort of peer circles and community is sort of like, yeah, I've seen that in movies, but I don't think it's really happened in my sort of circles. So it's not really real, right?
Right.
Yeah, I hear people talk about either fighting their demons. Well, we joke around that, right? We get the demon on our left shoulder and the angel on our right shoulder, I guess. Right. But no, with these people who are going through something that's pretty intense, we got to validate that first. And let's just help them out in the moment. Yeah. And we got to have listening ears first. So it's nothing new we're doing. It's or nothing new of technology, but it's maybe something new of how we approach it.
Yes, it's the approach. It's totally different because up until very recently, in fact, it's still going on. We know. I mean, things are always coming forward every single day on this topic. And it's just so sad to me that so many people can claim that they have experienced this such a deep, life-changing, perspective-changing, like everything that is in the fabric of their being changes because of these experiences. And oftentimes they go onto the right path eventually, and then they look back and they say, wait, I wasn't treated well. Yeah. I was treated with beyond disrespect. So it is a very interesting thing because this spiritual thing is strange when you have this emergency because you're bringing it to a place that it usually isn't, that conversation. However, that's why the conversation is important because if we can talk about it, And people who are responding to this sort of behavior first know how to kind of like the trigger words to kind of
Yeah.
allow for in the conversation without just snapping to
Quick judgment. Yeah.
judgment and
Yeah.
also aggressive action. I mean,
Yeah.
I've
Or
been
aggressive
pulled
action.
out
Yeah.
in handcuffs,
Mm,
you know what I mean,
mm,
for nothing. And
mm.
I will say this though, to be fair
Yeah.
to any old police officer out there
Yeah.
listening, the police officers were always so nice to me. It's
Right.
always
Yeah.
so bad that they had to put me in handcuffs, like, oh, this is
Right.
what I'm trained to do. But
Yeah.
that's the problem with the training.
Yeah.
So they know that they don't know what to do, or they don't feel good about it,
Hence the training. We need more of it, more of it. Yeah. And awareness. Aware. We need more awareness of, yeah. 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 I
Awareness.
mean, I want to say it, the other piece too in that moment, right, of first response is like you explained to me sort of what was your experience, right? And then to a family member, it looks foreign, right?
Yeah.
So it is so invalidating to kind of go through that experience and just suddenly be like, whoa, whoa. How invalidating would it be for someone out in the community for just a first responder to be like, yeah, but I need to put the cuffs on you or, whatever, just like a real quick response of just, I don't know what it is, but whatever you're going through, you just need to be put away somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's almost just so invalidating to the point where it kind of there's an avalanche response of like, well, if they think I'm crazy, I got to be crazy then, right? That person in
Yes.
that shoes of just going through that experience is like, and they're looking at me like I'm crazy. So it's
Yeah.
almost like self-fulfilling is like, I am crazy. This
Yeah.
is crazy. And it comes out crazy. But honestly, really, we should look at the blood, not to judge it, as they're going through an experience. I had a fit of rage, anger. My wife kind of looked at me like an alien foreign too. And it
Yeah.
was like, you need to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Right. I got out of there one day, went to outpatient, calmly went through program, went out on the other side really well. I think in some of the therapy reports, they go, yeah, high functional, high performer.
Yeah.
But I look like an alien stranger to my own spouse, right? When I went through it.
Right.
So we should not be labeling and judging what people are experiencing.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Right.
Just hearing you talk about how it shouldn't be done
Mm.
makes me feel validated because you're in the back and forth of it. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're still always like kind of checking yourself just as the person you are, Carlito, because you're just a good guy. Like, we just started throwing all of this kind of lived experience stuff
Yeah.
into now it's becoming your wheelhouse,
Yeah.
but it's definitely like this is talk that is just starting to get out there into
Yeah.
the mix. For instance, when I was at the ISPS
Yep.
conference, which stands for
Mm.
the International Society for Psychological and Social Approaches to Psychosis. Okay. When
Wow.
I had done that
That's a lot.
podcast in October,
Yeah.
it was like, I just couldn't believe that there were so many people willing, especially on the medical end. And this
Yeah.
really softened my heart because
Yeah.
I've been fighting for decades on this.
Yeah.
They started asking for what is in the psychosis? What are the symbols? What is the meaning? What is your meaning? And I'm like, wow, hold on now. I can talk
They're
about
asking you. Yeah.
that's
Huge,
important because,
huge.
like that's exactly what I tried to attempt to do in my book
Yeah.
is this idea that you want to know I know it looks crazy from the outside and I get it. I have that
Yeah.
recorded too
Yeah.
from your notes, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
let me show you what's on the inside. I want you to know what I'm thinking while I'm going through it. So
Yeah.
that was my hope to show that, it may seem out of touch with reality. It
Yeah.
may seem out of context. It may seem, but when someone goes that deep,
Yep.
they got to walk back.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you get back? It's the shaman's journey. You need to go you need to have a guide to take you back. Every shaman knows to get
Yep.
home. You need to make sure that you looked at certain things along the way and then you came
Yeah.
back and go, I didn't know how to do any of that.
Yeah. 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 Wow. Wow.
So I just am so happy that this conversation is beginning and me and you are both, I think, kind of floored about
Yeah.
how many people are taking to this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Who should people get in touch with, Carlito, if they're investors and whatnot?
Yeah. Well, no, thanks for saying that because I actually do think every day to myself, like it's exciting to work in this sort of facet and field of this intersection of psychology, mental health, religion. And then I also think like, yeah, I do like I love my first, my day job too. There's just not enough hours in the day. It really isn't. And so
Yes.
my passion and focus is getting a community together because we can all take on some sort of delegated skills and go out there. Like in response to what you're talking about ISPS, I kind of see myself not as a guide, just as a stabilized voice,
Yeah.
just kind of reminding people we're all in crisis. We have crisis
Right.
moments. The question is whether or not you're going to get open about it or admit to it. Because
Yeah.
those folks who are dropping their cell phones, cracking the screens, and going through fits of rage at home, we don't see that, right?
Right.
But they know what that emotion's like.
Right.
So we got to connect on like, look, I'm just trying to give a sort of good sounding board voice to this whole movement to say, these are valid, real, high functional, high performing people, right? They all gone through this lived spiritual experience. And let's not judge the black and white on this and just know that they're going through an experience that we've all had that same emotion of pain. So if there are more hours in a day, I'd be doing this a lot, right? So
Mm.
we need help. We need more able bodies who care about whether counseling or getting into the weeds of this, just because it connects with them.
Hmm.
But then also, we could do a lot by sort of with the funding pay for some of the things that we want to put out there on media.
Right.
Like I can't have my freshman year in NYU son kind of like while we're waiting for Chinese food, kind of throw in like a big social media post for me while he's just kind of like, hey, yeah, you could do this or whatever, and it takes him 20 minutes. I'd love to actually spend money on people who could actually put
Sure.
together a good reel and
Right.
throw it out there. And there's already footage out there that we've already done for A.W.A.R.E. So information on how to fund us for investors, donors, philanthropists, you contact Janet Werner at youhavemyword.com, and she spells it JANETWERNER at you is the letter U, havemyword.com, or myself, Carlito, at my Gmail address, which is C Cabelin, so it's spelled CCABELIN at gmail.com. So you can hear more about our media project story on YouTube. Just look up Not As Crazy As You Think podcast, which is yours, The Vision of Janet Werner documentary movie movement, right? That's on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook, Rethinking Mental Health. Just put that in there in the search. That's how you can find us. And LinkedIn. Just put in A.W.A.R.E. and with all the, the acronym with, periods after each letter, A.W.A.R.E. with periods in there. And then you'll find us on our LinkedIn page. So that's how we're in touch with socials.
Awesome. Carlito, let me just
Yes.
tell you, I am so reinvigorated
Awesome.
with this energy because I wanted it to be this too. I wanted it to
Yeah.
feel as though there are many wheels turning. This is a
Yeah.
movement.
Yep.
It's not just one thing or the other. We want a paradigm shift. We want a systems change, and we
Yep.
want the conversation to begin. It really is the story that's not being told. And
Yeah.
the ones who aren't telling it are sitting with it inside.
Yeah.
People are hurting. And
Yeah.
and we have to normalize it.
Yep. That's the best way to say
That's
it.
what
Yep.
the goal is, really, to get it out there, to make it known so that if everyone's like, oh, yeah, this is just like a thing. And let me tell you, when I
Mm,
was a kid, and this
mm,
happened to me now 30 years ago this year, okay, that this
wow.
thing happened to me first
Yeah.
time, it was like I thought it was almost like I was traveling in the future and meeting
Wow.
us
Yeah.
as a group.
Wow.
I thought that somebody was gonna come up to me and be like, "Oh, are you having a spiritual experience?"
Oh, wow. Really?
I
Yeah.
swear to you.
Yeah.
I kept thinking that someone was going to say that to me, and no one ever did.
Wow.
And then I just kept getting told I was crazy and mentally ill. And I was like, you know what? You know what? I almost died, and I got myself on the plane to get home. I'm not ill. I had something happen to me.
Wow.
You know, I think the world of you.
Oh, thank you.
You have such great energy, and you have such compassion and empathy for people. You are the person that really needs to be on the team right now. So I want to sing your praises.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I feel like this is the energy that's needed to get this out there. It's not just another story.
Yeah.
You know, it's all of these things that are involved with this project that are just, I feel, are the things that can influence change. And I really hope that we are on the brink of it. So thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And thank you for the perseverance, and thank to everyone who's listening in, who's part of the movement, and those who are searching for this, community, for you persevering too. Because when you're stuck in that emotion, you don't know why, right?
Yeah.
But later on, there's some answers as to why you're going through, because everyone who's sat with pain, you're going to help other people. You really are.
Thank you. I hope so. Thanks for listening to Not As Crazy As You Think, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And remember, mental health is attainable for anyone, especially those labeled with mental illness. Until next time, peace out.